agenda. Okay, we're going to start our meeting at 5:37. Selective. So first we are going to have some public comments. Does anyone like public comments? Yes, Brian Dalton of the DDA, I assume?
Yes.
Great, wonderful.
Brian Dalton, I represent the Downtown Association. I just wanted to make a comment that over the last 4 years or so, we have the Downtown Association have raised roughly $700,000 in grants to do capital investments downtown. Your annual take is about $240,000 a year tax money, so we're actually contributing as much as you are to downtown improvements. And we think it's a wonderful symbiotic relationship between what you guys do and what we're doing. We're financing a lot of the same things, and we're adding a lot of value to the district. We're getting lots of compliments now about what Dallas looks like downtown. And really, we can't prosper unless the place is neat and clean and looks good. And so that's our shtick, and we really appreciate working on a full basis.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Brian? Okay, thank you, Brian. Any other public comments? Okay. We'll go to the consent agenda, which would be the approval of the June 6 meetings and the budget and grants report. You had an opportunity to look that over. And if so, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make one.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Trevor, right? Yeah. All right, it's been first and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same. All right, we now are moving on to the general fund presentation. Kim Fitzgerald and Gary Marks. Oh. All right.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for allowing us some time to share this presentation with you. We are grateful for your time. I am Councilor Kim Fitzgerald, City Councilor Kim Fitzgerald, and with me today is Gary Marks, Director of Public Works. My glasses on here. We have an important message to share with you. As we share this presentation, we will be reading from the script because this same presentation will be given many by different people. We want to ensure that each of the presentations are consistent and the same information is shared in the same way. At the end of this presentation, we will ask for your feedback. There will also be a time at the end to ask questions. We will do our best to answer your questions. Questions we cannot answer today, we will ask for your contact information and get you the answer shortly. We do ask that you please hold any questions until the end of the presentation. We have provided question cards. For you to write your questions while during the presentation to help you recall the questions at the end of the presentation. So let's jump right in. I'll have Gary begin the presentation.
Today we'll be talking about the city's general fund. We will discuss how to make and keep this important fund sustainable. What is the city general fund? The general fund is one of many funds in the city's budget. General fund services typically do not have their own dedicated revenue source. An example of a fund that does have its own revenue source is the water fund. The water fund is supported by water fees collected on the city bill. The city's general fund services are shown on this slide. They include police, fire, aquatic center, parks and recreation, library, economic and community development, and a few others. How does the general fund get funded? The general fund receives revenues principally through 7 sources. Those sources are property taxes, fees for service, franchise fees, state shared revenues, municipal court fines, lodging taxes, and library shared revenues. Again, these revenues support all of the city's services shown on the previous slide. The city's general fund is only part of the city's budget. Other funds include the building fund, utility funds like water, sewer, and stormwater, and the street fund. The city's general fund is less than 30% of the city's total budget. General fund revenues are unrestricted, meaning they can be spent on any city service. All of the other funds in the city's budget represented in this slide in red lettering are restricted funds. This means revenues for these funds can only be spent for the purpose the funds were collected. For example, building permit revenues can only be spent on building permitting and inspection services. Building permit revenue cannot be spent on general fund programs like police, fire, or library services. Let's talk about the issue we face in the general fund. The city's trajectory for the general fund's beginning fund balance is forecasted on a pretty steep decline. The beginning fund balance is the best indicator of the health of the fund, as it represents the money available at the beginning of the fiscal year. As can be seen in this graph, the city's general fund is projected to begin fiscal year 2025-26 with a negative balance. This cannot happen, which means immediate action is needed to sustain this fund. The city's financial policy is to have a beginning fund balance that is at least 10% of the operating funds of the general fund. This amount is roughly $1.5 million. The red line shows the $1.5 million mark. Again, as can be seen, we need to take action now to ensure our beginning fund balance does not fall below the red line. We should note the beginning fund balance in last fiscal year and in fiscal year 23-24 is skewed much higher than is normal. This is due to the infusion of one-time American Rescue Plan Act funding from the federal government. The city council has decided to spend this one-time funding on the city's capital projects, such as purchasing emergency response vehicles and updating economic development plans. This one-time revenue was not spent on personnel because it is not sustainable with one-time revenue. So why does this issue exist? First, the general fund revenues do not keep pace with expenditures. In a minute, we'll talk about Oregon property tax ballot measures 5 and 50 and how they factor into this issue. In addition, locally in Dallas, general fund revenues have been negatively affected by losses in the city's tax base and franchise fees. Second, as the city has experienced managed growth, the demand for the city's general fund services has increased. A few examples of these increases include the addition of the Dallas Aquatic Center, the transition from volunteer only to combination volunteer and paid fire protection personnel, and the addition of sworn police officers. The third is inflation. Cities like all of you are not immune to the effects of inflation. We have recently seen the cost of project and services increase dramatically. Finally, the city can no longer afford to defer making capital purchases, postponing projects, and deferring maintenance of our facilities. We'll now dive a little deeper into each of these causes. Measure 5 was approved by the Oregon voters in 1990. This measure, among other things, splits property taxes into education and non-education categories. Non-education categories include cities, counties, and special districts. This measure also limited the amount of property taxes that could be collected from an individual property to $5 per $1,000 real market value for education and $10 per $1,000 of real market value for non-education purposes. Measure 50 was approved by the Oregon voters in 1997. The measure established permanent tax rates for taxing authorities and prohibited a taxing authority from increasing this rate. Hence the name permanent rate. City of Dallas's permanent rate is $4.19. Measure 50 also created an allowance for a taxing district to ask its voters to approve local option levies. The local option levy is limited to a maximum 5-year period. Finally, Measure 50 established assessed values for every property. The assessed values were based on 1994 values, or 10% below the 1995 real market value, whichever was less. Assessed values may not be increased by more than 3% a year. Assessed revenues may also decrease if the real market value drops below the assessed value. The final note on assessed values is that they do not reset at the time a property sells. This creates large disparities in tax bills for properties with similar characteristics and improvements. In summary, these two tax measures limit the city's ability to increase property taxes, pay for increased cost of city services. In addition to Oregon property tax laws, shrinking the city's industrial tax base also has had a negative impact on general fund revenue. Each of these major employers closed their doors prior to 2009. The loss of these three businesses lowered the taxable value of the properties they once occupied. The amount of franchise fees the city collected through their operations was also eliminated. For example, at the top end, the Dallas mill site paid more than $400,000 in property taxes each year they were in operation. Today, the property tax bill for the same property is only $25,000. This is a significant reduction in property taxes collected. The reduction in franchise fees comes as a result of these businesses no longer consuming utilities such as electric power and gas. Because these businesses consume a lot of power and gas, they would pay large amounts of franchise fees for their consumption. Those fees would then be given to the city. When the consumption went away, so did the franchise fee revenue. Another important factor affecting the health of the city's general fund is increases in demand for city services. For example, the Dallas Aquatic Center was constructed and operational in 2000. This is a new general fund supported service. The operation and ongoing maintenance of the facility is paid for with general fund revenues, including fees and membership dues for use of the Aquatic Center. In fiscal year 2021-22, the Aquatic Center had a cost recovery of nearly 61%. This is the second best cost recovery for a general fund service, second only to the ambulance service. Our community continues to show strong support for the Aquatic Center, and we have great employees working there. Another example of increased demand for services was the transition of the city's fire protection services from a volunteer department to a combination department. This means we use both paid daytime staff and volunteers to support nighttime calls. Since 2016, the fire and EMS department has added 9 full-time positions to its department. 7 of these positions are paid for out of the general fund. 2 other positions are paid by this firefighter EMT fee collected on the city bill. We are very fortunate to have excellent employees and volunteers serve our community in the area of fire and EMS service. A final example of increased demand for services is the addition of 6 sworn police officers to the police department since 2016. These increases have taken place over the past 7 years and reflect the growth in the community. Like the fire and EMS department, our community is very well served by excellent and professional police officers. The last factor we'll discuss, which affects why the general fund sustainability issue exists, is capital purchases and deferral of projects and facility maintenance. The capital project is a purchase of a good or material that costs at least $10,000. The graph on the slide shows the forecasted needs and budgeted amounts of general fund capital expenses for the next 4 fiscal years. In fiscal year 2022-23, 2023-24, we were able to invest nearly $600,000 and $400,000 in each of those years for capital projects. Challenge is there were several capital purchases, projects, and facility maintenance needs that were deferred to later fiscal years because we did not have enough money to pay for all the needed purchases. This is no different than a family budget. The tough decisions need to be made, and not everything is going to get done because the money just isn't there. In the next 4 fiscal years, the city is forecasting a need for about 1 million to 1.3 million in general fund capital projects. This is shown on the blue bars on the graph. Forecasted budget is shown by the orange bars on the graph. A couple of examples of capital purchases projects or facility maintenance that have been deferred includes the replacement of a 28-year-old fire truck, aged police vehicles, and new roofs and siding on parks, buildings, and structures. Now that we have discussed what the general fund is and several of the factors affecting its sustainability, we need to answer the question of how do we resolve this issue? There are both long-term and immediate solutions. The long-term solution is to grow the city's industrial and commercial tax base. The immediate solutions are to either increase general fund revenues or reduce the city's general fund services. The good news is that the city is very actively working on the long-term solution. However, as we'll show a bit later, this solution will take many years to bear fruit. So this means that we need both the long-term solution and an immediate solution to make and keep the general fund sustainable now and into the future. I'll now turn some time over to Kim, who will discuss in greater detail much of the good work the city is doing on the long-term solution.
As was just noted, the long-term solution to making the general fund sustainable is to grow the city's tax base by adding and expanding commercial and industrial businesses into the Dallas economy. The city has seen some recent wins in this area. One example of an industrial business recruitment was working with Pacific Engineering to purchase the former Pegasus Tyco building on Monmouth Road for their advanced metal manufacturing business. Centec has and plans to invest millions of dollars into this property and their business, bringing many family wage jobs to the local community. An example of commercial expansion is the Open Roads headquarters on East Ellendale. As shown in this photo, this project is currently under construction and is a multi-million-dollar investment into the local economy from an existing Dallas business. You may ask yourself, why isn't all of the residential growth in Dallas fixing this issue? The reason is because commercial and industrial development are taxed at higher percentages of their real market value than is residential development. See, business owners in here say probably. Further, residential development uses more general fund supported services than commercial and industrial development. So by targeting growth in the commercial and industrial sectors, we are focusing on high revenue and low resource consuming development. This slide helps paint the picture of why growing the tax base is a long-term solution. The city needs about 2 million additional revenue each year to make the general fund sustainable. It would take $476 million in assessed value for Dallas to raise $2 million in new general fund revenue. When you convert this into real market value investment by single family residential, multi-family residential, commercial and industrial categories, it looks like this. For single family residential development, the city would need to add $762 million in real market value or over 2,500 homes with a sales value of $300,000. For a multi-family residential development, the city would need to add $796 million in real market value. For commercial development, the city would need to add $706 million in real market value. And for industrial development, the city would need to add $476 million in real market value. When you look at this breakdown, it becomes clear that the best way to add property tax revenue to the city's general fund is through industrial development. To work toward increasing the industrial tax base, the City Council in 2022 created the South Dallas Urban Renewal Plan area. This area is shown here on this map and includes the shaded areas. The blue shading are areas zoned for industrial development, while the red shading is commercially zoned areas, and the light brown areas are zoned residential. The urban renewal program will enable the city to financially incentivize industrial and manufacturing development on our vacant and underutilized industrial lands. The urban renewal program will also enable the city to address and remove barriers to development, such as wetland mitigation and flooding issues on these properties, by utilizing the state of Oregon's industrial site readiness program. Another way the city is addressing the long-term solution is to help the former mill site redevelop. The city is actively working with this project. City has developed a good working relationship with the owner of the property. Together, we have obtained a grant to hire a consultant to develop this redevelopment plan. Finally, the city has also completed a flood study of the North Fork Ash Creek, which runs through this property, causing flooding issues. Another way the city is working toward the long-term solution is master planning the area north of Ellendale and Lock Road Drive to increase commercial land supply in the city. The red and blue areas on the map are areas planned for commercial and mixed-use zoning. This plan would add roughly 90 acres of commercial land to the city's inventory of commercial land available for development. This project is underway with the technical advisory committee working through the planning process. In addition, infrastructure planning and design work is also underway, so this area will be served by city utilities. The final way we will discuss how the city is addressing the long-term solution is by increasing the city's raw water storage capacity. The city receives its water from the Coast Range Mountains through rainfall. We capture the water in Aaron Mercer Reservoir. We want to recruit industries which have a high water demand. We must increase our storage capacity. We'll do this by expanding the capacity of Mercer Reservoir. The planning work for this is underway. We are actively working with the state to obtain water storage rights. This project is a several years long effort. Lastly, we will mention that the City Council recently enacted water rate increases to actively set aside funding for this project. Having reviewed the great work the city is doing on the long-term solution, understanding that an immediate solution is also needed to sustain the city's general fund, let's take a look at the 4 potential options for an immediate solution. Option 1 is to present the voters with a public safety operations levy for approval. If approved, the current public safety fee on the city bill would be removed. Option 2 is to present the voters with a Parks and Recreation District for approval and increase the public safety fee on the city bill. Option 3 is to present the voters with a public safety operation levy for approval and increase the public safety fee on the city bill. And option 4 is to make widespread reductions of general fund services. I'll turn the presentation back to Gary, who will explain each of the 4 options in more detail.
Option 1 is the public safety operating levy and removing the public safety fee from the city bill. Public safety levy would be a 5-year property tax on taxpayers inside the city limits of Dallas. As such, the levy would be voted on by the electorate inside the Dallas city limits. Public safety fee is a $4.95 fee that is collected monthly on the city bill. This fee generates roughly $460,000 in revenue each year. It was designed to pay for 2 police officers and 2 firefighter EMSs. If the public safety operating levy were to pass, then this fee would be removed from the monthly city bill once tax revenues are collected. Option 1 would sustain the general fund over the next 5 years by adding revenues to directly support public safety services. Under option 1, the public safety levy would be in the amount of $1.90 per $1,000 of assessed property value. This is the highest tax rate of any option because this option would also remove the current public safety fee from the monthly city bill. Under option 1, a Dallas property owner whose property is assessed at $300,000 would pay an additional $570 a year in property taxes. Also under this option, no one would pay the monthly public safety fee. Option 2 is the creation of a Parks and Recreation District and increasing the monthly public safety fee on the city bill. The Parks and Recreation District is a standalone taxing authority with its own elected governing body and staff. If created, the city would turn over the ownership and operation of all City of Dallas parks and recreation amenities and programs. The Parks and Recreation District can only be created by an affirmative vote of the registered voters inside the boundary of the proposed district. The proposed Parks and Recreation District boundary is the same boundary as the current Dallas School District boundary. If approved and a new tax rate is established, you will be paid by the taxpayers both inside and outside the city limits. If the district were created, the tax rate to support the district would be a permanent tax rate. Also under option 2, it is proposed that the public safety fee currently on the city bill be increased to pay for public safety personnel. Option 2 sustains the general fund by removing the Parks and Recreation expenditures from the city's budget and by adding revenues directly to public safety services. Under option 2, the Parks and Recreation District permanent tax rate would be in the amount of $1.25 per $1,000 of assessed property value. This is the lowest tax rate of skip forward, I apologize. This is the lowest tax rate of any option. The public safety fee would increase from $4.95 to $10.50 each month. Under option 2, a Dallas property owner who also pays the monthly city bill would pay $441.60 more each year than they currently pay. Option 3 is a public safety operating levy and increasing the monthly public safety fee on the city bill. Option 3 is similar to option 1, except that instead of all the revenue being generated from the public safety levy, the city would also generate funding from increasing the public safety fee collected through the monthly city bill. Like option 1, the public safety levy, and option 3 would be a 5-year property tax on the taxpayers inside the city limits of Dallas. As such, the levy would be voted on by the electorate inside Dallas city limits. The public safety fee is a $4.95 fee that is collected monthly on the city bill. This fee generates roughly $460,000 in revenue each year. Was designed to pay for 2 police officers and 2 firefighter EMSs. Under option 3, public safety fee would be increased. Option 3 sustains the general fund over the next 5 years by adding revenues to directly support public safety services. Under option 3, public safety levy would be in the amount of $1.30 per $1,000 of assessed property value. No, your head. On the head. In addition, the public safety fee would increase from $4.95 to $10.50 each month. Under option 3, a Dallas property owner who also pays a monthly city bill would pay $456.60 more each year than they currently pay. Okay, here we are. Sorry about that, folks. Option 4 reduces our expenditures to meet current revenue. City previously did this in 2020 by making personnel reductions to better align general fund expenditures with revenues. Today, a new revenue solution is not preferred. The reduction of the general fund services starting in July 2024 will be necessary. Those reductions will be as follows. Eliminating 6 positions from the fire and EMS department, including three paramedic EMSs, 2 firefighter EMTs, sorry, and 1 division chief. This reduction will impact service delivery, including increased response times, reliance on mutual aid partners, putting patients in health crisis at risk of not receiving immediate care. In addition, the community risk and reduction program will be suspended indefinitely, and the department's community involvement activities such as school visits, CPR, and AED classes will be limited. Next, we will eliminate 6 positions from the police department, including a sergeant, traffic safety officer, school resource officer, detective, and 2 patrol officers. These reductions will impact service delivery, including proactive traffic enforcement, no in-school police presence, no longer or longer time to process and resolve criminal matters, and reducing the number of police officers available to respond to calls for service. In addition, we will close the aquatic center and eliminate 36 employee positions. This reduction permanently closes the only public accessible pool in the community. It will also negatively impact the school swim program and physical therapists in Dallas who use the center for their business. Next, we will close the Dallas Public Library on Saturdays and eliminate 1 position. This reduction restricts the city's library to weekday use only, with very limited hours for persons who work full-time jobs. Finally, we will eliminate the parks manager position, 1 code services position, a half-time parks maintenance position, and a half-time facility maintenance position. These cuts will reduce the maintenance in our city parks and eliminate all recreation programming. These cuts will also increase the amount of time to resolve code violation issues such as inoperable vehicles and RVs parked on the city streets and removing junk from private properties. As a final note, even with these reductions, the city will continue to collect the current $4.95 public safety fee on the city bill. This slide shows a side-by-side comparison of each of the 4 options. Total cost to a Dallas property owner who also pay the city bill for options 1 through 3 are shown by what it would cost you each week. Option 1 is the most expensive option and will cost you $9.82 per week. Another way of looking at the cost is it would cost you 2.5 lattes. Option 2 is the least expensive option. It would cost you $8.49 per week for 2 lattes. Option 3 costs $8.74 per week for 2.25 lattes. Option 4 does not cost you any more money. However, you will receive longer public safety response times, no aquatic center, no weekend library service, and less parks maintenance in our city's parks and trails system. I'll now turn the time back to Kim, who will discuss the next steps in this process and facilitate any questions you may have.
So what's next? The city council wants your feedback. To provide your feedback, we ask that you please complete a feedback form before leaving today. We will pass out the feedback forms in just a few minutes. We do ask that you please include your name at the top of the form and that you only complete 1 form. Council will meet this fall and consider your collective feedback before making a decision on which option to pursue. If options 1, 2, or 3 are selected, a ballot measure will be placed on the May 2024 election ballot. If option 4 is selected or an attempted ballot measure fails to be approved, the reductions outlined in option 4 will take effect on July 1st, 2024. Thank you for having us today. We know that was a lot of information to take in, and we appreciate your patience with this. I'm happy to answer your questions. Just a quick reminder though, if we don't have the answer to your question today, we'll get your information and get back to you.
So are there any questions? Yes, Bob.
So in the time period 21-22, that increase in the amount of money going to the general fund came from the pandemic money coming into the city. So without that, that would have started the downhill slide. Then what caused, from what has been up above the median line that you want to keep in the general fund to start off with, to cause it to go down? Just the rapid increase in population in the city?
So, let's see. Frequently asked questions, which I'm authorized to find the answer. If it's not there, I need to know the answer to that. What you're asking is without
The federal government money, it would have been going down. Yeah.
Why is that? And I believe in our presentation, it referred to
Well,
capital improvements that have been deferred.
mhm. And so these are the street improvements that have been needed to be made that failed on a measure years ago. And
Not streets, I guess. Well, the city looked at a bond for capital improvements, and capital bond would help, but not with deferred capital expenditures were only about 25% of the shortfall the city is attempting to resolve. So we could pay for that 25% with capital bond. The other 75% is needed in a different solution. But I'm not sure that answers your question.
Well,
the street fund is one of those restricted funds
yeah.
outside of the general.
Oh, okay, it is. Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
But I do know that there are a few things that have been deferred.
So what's the definition of deferred payments
Not payments.
or
but
deferred
projects.
projects? Just
So
things that are on hold?
were Money that there just wasn't enough money things to just do.
The last time I was one of these, they mentioned needing new fire truck and
Yeah.
Ladder truck.
ladder truck. Yeah.
And that comes out of the general, it's not something.
Capital projects.
Well, and then my question has a part two. So the property tax measures, which came in the 1990s, have been with us for a long time now. And the closures of the large employers in Dallas has been mostly 10 years ago when most of them started closing. And it's been a long time to let this go. And I've been saying for years that we got to get these jobs replaced, just from a business standpoint, for keeping people in town to do business, but also for taxing purposes too. And it's.
Well, I would say that with Acentic coming into the type of Acentic, I mean, that helps.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at the mill site, trying to get that.
I keep telling Roger to get his boy back from Thailand so we can get back to working on that.
It sounds like a really exciting project, the mill site, so.
Yeah.
In option number 2, did you say that it would be an elected board that would run that?
Yes.
Okay. And then in here, it says that it would be a fixed permanent rate. Permanent forever, or they'd never have opportunities to increase it or decrease.
It would fall under the measure 50 standard as well.
Okay, so it's that
Yeah.
locked, okay.
Yeah, any district, whether it's just in time or as it's being created, is regulated by measure 50 standards.
Gotcha. And is the 125, is that, it's not a rate, but is that going to be the rate that they do, or will it be up for determination at that time?
That would be part of what the voters would vote on. If the council puts that measure on the ballot.
Gotcha, okay.
The Parks and Rec district is going to be voted on by only people in the Dallas area or people outside of the city limits in the region, would they be?
It would be all voters inside the Dallas school district.
School district boundary, which covers a lot more than just the city limits of Dallas. And I'm wondering what the voters that are outside of the city are gonna have to say about that, because they voted down the budget or the district to run the swimming pool way back when.
Sam? Oh,
So probably a question you don't have an answer to, but dedicated funds versus non-dedicated funds. It's my understanding that most of the dedicated funds are not legally required to be dedicated. They're just best practice that we don't delve into our water fund because it's not a good idea. It's not accepted, but it's not actually technically illegal to do that. First question is there a city charter that prevents that? And second question is, are there dedicated funding sources that we have a surplus for that in worst case scenario we could dig into? Okay. I wouldn't expect you to, but that would be one.
I know for sure there are some funds you can't spend on things outside of what you're collecting for. Gas tax. That's one example.
any other questions? I have a couple, so. These 4 choices, city council is open to other choices too, or combinations, or right now we're just sort of exploring, and that was the easiest way to put a presentation together was with just 4 choices, or?
Yeah, so that's what, city staff brought to us,
Mhm.
was kind of these 4 choices. If
One of the frequently asked questions that we have in front of us here says, did the city consider an option that combined a reduction in services and a smaller levy amount? Answer, reducing services to lower the levy amount means citizens would pay more or less services. City believes this type of scenario would not be well supported.
Also, we
I
have.
think the answer-
city consider privatizing businesses. Right, city services. The city has explored a few opportunities, including the aquatic center. Partners wishing to privatize the aquatic center will only assume operation, leaving the ongoing facility maintenance on the public dollar, and that's not a cost-effective solution either. So I guess they've explored some different ideas.
I mean, these 4, in my opinion, and certainly not the board here or the committee. It seems to me like that there's a whole lot of little things that need to happen and put it all together, that rather than just let's raise tax, or let's not go to the library. And I don't drink lattes, so I'm just was a little put off by how many lattes I don't get a week. When I am cash poor, but I have property. I have to sell property. I mean, I had to do that in 2009. It was painful because I love all my old buildings, but I had to sell one. If you go on Polk County Tax, there's 23 pages, and I think there's 10 on each page of property that the city of Dallas owns. A lot of them are just small little things like 1 foot strip at the end of a, cul-de-sac or but there's over $2 million sitting out on North Corner Road of EFU land, 2 houses and 125 acres plus of farmland. And the city acquired in 1990 for the Poplar Tyco thing. And it just seems to me like that if the city wants to come to the taxpayers and ask for another $500, I mean, no house anymore is at 300,000. New houses over here east of town are coming almost up to 500,000 for, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were not quite 400,000. Now they're much more. So that 300,000 mark, taxpayers are going to realize, well, it's going to be more than $476 a year. Seems, yeah.
So it's not the actual value of sales value.
Okay.
Assessed value. Less than,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
say, the house.
Right. The real market value versus the assessed. Yeah, that's a good point. But it just seems to me like that the city ought to sell some excess property. And that would be a really goodwill measure to be able to show the taxpayers we've tightened our budget and we've sold and we've sacrificed and gotten rid of some things. And now we're coming to you for the same thing. Because there's 200 in market value, and some of this is assessed value sitting out there that could be sold, and that could, even if you put it in 5% CDs or something, there's a lot of money. I'm just saying that there's other properties also. I went blind by about page 15 of the 23 pages, but there's property that the city of Dallas it's not inside the city limits. Mm-hmm. And Ken, do you have information about that or property or anything?
Never heard that option before, but I know we always have to plan on expanding. One of the things we talked about is the new mill site. And it's just in discussion stages now, there's nothing firm. So discuss was to punch through the Monmouth cutoff all the way to Jefferson Street, and Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that would open up that part of town to better traffic.
Sure.
There's also the option of what kind of buildings do we want in that area? And do you want to have strictly light industrial? Do you want medium industrial? Do you want residential? Do you want commercial, retail? If you've noticed the part of downtown Salem on Broadway north of downtown, there's where the cinema is. There's a whole bunch of new construction there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very attractive.
It is.
Primarily the ground floor is commercial or and then the upper floors are residential. I kind of, in the back of my mind, I kind of have that picture down there, but I don't know what plan is yet because we don't have a plan. So there's options like that, but I think it was stated earlier that if we can tax the industry or businesses at a higher rate than we can tax residential. So we have, I forget the numbers you guys read, but you could add so much commercial and the tax income from those would be much greater than you would from residential, close to the same values. So, and that was another discussion point about the water. People see all the new construction, they're afraid they're going to use up all the water. That's not true because light industrial uses far more water than homes do. And so we're anxious to build a new reservoir, fire dam, And hopefully then that will bring maybe some business to town. I know there's a business coming to town that wants to relocate here because there's room for their business. And they were in another town and they can't expand there, so this we're gonna move.
Mhm.
They're coming to Dallas, so these small industries are coming. I once asked the president of the Centrics, yeah, and I've known Ian since he was a little boy, but I said, what about businesses that sell to you? Supply you your products so you can manufacture. Would there be room for them here? And he said, no, we would just start our own business like that. So they would expand that way.
Mhm.
rather than Bring in somebody that builds little gadgets. So it's the word they use all the time, but anyway. So there's those kind of things that could happen. And if we open up on a cutoff like that. There's a new roundabout going to be going in where Monmouth Cutoff and 99 intersect. Supposed to make it easier for commercial vehicles to come in and out. So that's a positive thing. So there's all kinds of little things that are still in the beginning. But I don't know. I hope one of these three things work. I really do. Which one? I'm not sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a couple of quick questions, in interest of time. So in relation to our urban renewal district here, with the increase in taxes on properties in, if option 1 through, I guess even well, no, I guess it'd be options 1 or 3. So if we increase taxes, how does that relate to properties that are inside the urban renewal district? Is that it? Seeing how it's a levy, does it have nothing to do with us, or does that money get captured and put into the urban renewal district?
Answer to that, but it's not an ask question. So that becomes part of the tax rates that they look at under ballot meeting 5,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the properties that are inside of the renewal districts would be collected or in favor of the district, just like any other.
Okay, so they wouldn't go into the general fund, it would essentially go to this district. Okay. And that would be theoretically the same with the South Renew, whatever the name of the new one is, the mill property and all that, would be the same for that, so those wouldn't go into the general fund either.
Any others? All right, thank you very much for doing this. I'm sure you've given this a few times. Yeah, thank you. And let's see, we'll fill out some forms or something here.
Yeah. I don't think we got comment cards.
Yeah. Are that, okay,
And if we've already filled one,
okay.
If you are.
yeah, first meeting I went to this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're good.
I've already
I'm
done
good.
I need one. Thank you very much.
Well, did you change your mind?
Can I have theirs? Can I have theirs?
I'm still as undecided. No, I would go for the Parks District, but I think it's gonna be a tough sell.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay, staff reports, any updates? Charlie?
All right, in the interest of time, so short, don't think there's anything really. Fundamental on the updates. We have the staff report, any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. The next item under staff reports is really the one action item we have for you tonight. So I'll stop right there and say, are there any questions on just the general updates?
Got some questions. On the 2 projects that are not yet started, is there a deadline for them to be started by?
Yes, and since the staff was put together, one of them has been closed out, there's only one remaining. And the owner of that project is actually in this room, so that person can answer. But yeah, the bottom line is, they're given a deadline, they have the opportunity to extend those deadlines if they request them. Or
Okay.
they have a good reason, we'll have to do that. To my knowledge, the one that's still outstanding is not yet requested an extension. I believe that one expires right now, set to expire in August
And then you said the other one closed out, meaning it's completed?
Completed, yes.
Okay. And then also on the 9 grant applications for this next round, was that 9 that were received by the city and all of them were approved, or were there additional ones that were not approved?
So there were 9 that were received for that basically $108,000 and
Okay.
we approved all.
Okay.
Question will go on to next item, which is proposed changes to the minor improvement grant. The proposal here, what's recommended is just to kind of tighten up some language. There's always creative little loopholes that property owners discover in our user-friendly guidelines that we put together to make the program, usable for the applicant. One of those, as it's currently written, can allow a property owner to get multiple grants for a building that has multiple addresses. We believe as staff, it wasn't really the intent of the program to use it that way, that it was really designed with very limited funding to be spread around the district as much as possible. So the language that's being proposed to be changed is highlighted in the staff report as in the attachment, which it kind of includes at the very bottom of the last page, a graphic that kind of further emphasizes what it is we're trying to do. So unless we don't align on what we think the intent is of the grant program, a recommendation of staff would be to better refine this language to prevent that type of use, so that it's really limited to just one property on a per building. We're trying to find the practical.
Makes sense to me.
So I don't have to read the whole thing. I would like to make the first motion on your recommended motions.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so that's the first one. To direct staff to make changes to the minor improvement grant as proposed by staff in attachment B, right?
Yes.
That's what we've got. Okay, for the record. All right, we've had a first and a second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, I think, are there any comments now from the members? All right, and is there some other business we need to talk about? We need to congratulate Tyler for his award the other night. Mhm. Yeah.
And Sam's too.
And Sam's too, that's right. My God, we have a bunch of winners on this group. Yes. That's wonderful. Yeah, it was a great evening. All right, and we're going to have our next meeting August 1st. And if there's nothing else, we shall adjourn at 6:32. Oh, we did pretty good. All right.
All right. Tomorrow this time be at the amphitheater, first concert of the year.
So we're back.